In the dim glow of two moons casting an ethereal light across the crimson sands, Zareen stood atop the crystalline observation deck of her royal spacecraft, gazing down at the bustling human colony below. Her violet eyes, flecked with silver like distant stars, reflected the complex emotions swirling within her. For centuries, her people had observed Earth's inhabitants from afar, studying their peculiar customs and volatile nature. But nothing in her extensive education could have prepared her for this moment. The human man who now occupied her every thought had first caught her attention during one of his routine maintenance checks on the colony's perimeter. His name was Marcus, and unlike the others who moved about their tasks with mechanical precision, he carried himself with a curious combination of determination and gentle curiosity. His dark hair, perpetually tousled by the planet's constant winds, framed a face that bore the marks of both hardship and humor. Most striking were his eyes, deep brown pools that seemed to hold entire galaxies of emotion. Their initial encounter had been entirely accidental. Zareen had been collecting atmospheric samples when her cloaking device malfunctioned, revealing her presence to the unsuspecting engineer. Instead of reacting with fear or hostility as protocol predicted, Marcus had simply smiled and offered her a thermos of what he called the best coffee this side of the galaxy. That simple gesture had sparked something unprecedented in Zareen, a warmth that spread through her being, defying all her training about maintaining emotional distance from lesser species. Over the following weeks, their meetings became less accidental and more intentional. Marcus would find excuses to work near the hidden observation points where she watched, leaving small gifts, a flower that grew only in the colony's hydroponic gardens, sketches of the alien landscapes they both admired, notes written in his careful hand explaining Earth's constellations. Each offering was accompanied by that same warm smile, each interaction leaving Zareen more confused about her feelings and her duty. Her people believed humans to be primitive, their emotions too raw and uncontrolled to be trusted. Yet Marcus demonstrated a depth of understanding that transcended these prejudices. He spoke of Earth's art and music with such passion that it made her chest ache, described his world's capacity for both destruction and creation with equal parts sorrow and hope. In his company, Zareen found herself questioning everything she'd been taught about boundaries between species, about the supposed superiority of her own kind. The weight of her position pressed heavily upon her shoulders. As crown princess of the Velari, she was bound by ancient laws and expectations that left no room for personal desires. Her arranged bonding ceremony loomed closer with each passing cycle, a political alliance meant to strengthen ties with another powerful alien faction. Yet here she was, sneaking away from her royal duties to watch a human man repair solar panels, her heart's beating erratically at the mere sight of him. What troubled Zareen most was how naturally Marcus accepted her differences. When her bioluminescent markings flared in response to strong emotions, a trait that often frightened other species, he merely commented on their beauty. When her second pair of arms emerged during moments of stress, a biological feature many humans found disturbing, he simply asked if she needed help with whatever task had caused her anxiety. His acceptance was absolute, unwavering, and utterly disarming. As the days turned into weeks, Zareen found herself yearning for more than just stolen moments between duty shifts and diplomatic obligations. She began documenting their interactions in her private logs, not for scientific purposes as protocol demanded, but because she wanted to preserve every detail. The way his voice softened when he spoke of his homeworld, how his hands moved with practiced grace when repairing machinery, the genuine interest he showed in learning about her culture despite the language barriers. Yet with each passing day, the risk grew greater. The council had begun to notice her frequent absences, and whispers of her unusual behavior had reached even the highest levels of Velari society. Her betrothed, Prince Zarian of the Zithari, had sent several messages requesting updates on their impending union, messages she had been avoiding with increasing difficulty. The political implications of her growing attachment to Marcus were catastrophic, yet she found herself unable to sever the connection. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon in a spectacular display of colors that rivaled any aurora on Earth, Marcus approached her hiding spot with a determined look in his eyes. Zareen felt her secondary hearts flutter in anticipation, though she maintained her usual composed exterior. This time, however, he didn't bring a gift or a casual greeting. Instead, he took a deep breath and began speaking words that would change everything between them forever. "Zareen," he started, his voice steady despite the nervous energy radiating from him, "I know we come from different worlds, literally and figuratively. But ever since that day you appeared out of thin air with your incredible, Well, everything. I haven't been able to think straight. He paused, running his fingers through his hair, making it even more unruly than usual. You must have realized by now that I'm not exactly subtle about my feelings. Every gift, every note, every time I coincidentally end up working near your observation points, none of it has been accidental. Zareen's primary hearts raced as she watched him struggle to find the right words. She knew what was coming, had felt it building between them for weeks, yet hearing it spoken aloud sent shockwaves through her being. Her bioluminescent markings began to pulse softly, betraying her emotional state despite her attempts to remain calm. I've fallen in love with you, Marcus finally blurted out, his cheeks flushing a deep red that somehow made him even more endearing. Not because you're an alien princess, though that's certainly impressive, but because of who you are, how you see beauty in things I've taken for granted, how your laughter sounds like wind chimes in a summer breeze, how you make me want to be better, to understand more, to reach beyond what I thought was possible. He took a step closer, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. I know it's crazy, probably impossible, definitely forbidden. But I can't keep pretending that what we have isn't real. So here I am, laying it all out there, consequences be damned. He reached out tentatively, his hand hovering near but not quite touching her shimmering skin. What do you say, Your Highness? Am I completely insane, or is there maybe possibly the tiniest chance that you might feel something for me too? The silence that followed stretched longer than any moment Zareen had ever experienced. Her 4 hearts beat in chaotic rhythm, each pulse echoing through her body like thunder. Marcus stood before her, vulnerable and open, his human heart visible in his eyes, while she struggled to process the magnitude of his declaration. The air between them crackled with unspoken possibilities, each second building pressure like a star on the verge of supernova. Without warning, Zareen's secondary arms unfurled from their concealed positions along her torso, a reflexive response to extreme emotional distress. The soft glow emanating from her skin shifted from its usual serene blue to a vibrant, pulsing violet, a visual manifestation of her internal turmoil that no amount of royal training could suppress. Marcus's eyes widened at the transformation, but instead of retreating in fear as others might have done, he simply watched her with that same gentle curiosity that had first drawn her to him. 1,000 responses fought for dominance in Zareen's mind. Protocol demanded immediate termination of this inappropriate relationship. Her royal status dictated that she maintain proper distance from all non-Velari beings. The political ramifications of acknowledging any form of affection for a human were beyond catastrophic. Yet beneath all these rational arguments surged an overwhelming tide of emotion that threatened to drown her carefully constructed defenses. Her first impulse was to flee, to retreat back into the safety of her royal chambers and erase this moment from existence. But as she met Marcus's unwavering gaze, she found her feet rooted to the spot. The vulnerability in his expression mirrored her own inner conflict, creating a connection that transcended their species' differences. For the first time in her life, she understood why humans place such value on eye contact. Those deep brown pools held her captive, forcing her to confront truths she had been avoiding. The complexity of their situation hit her like a meteor strike. Marcus had laid bare his soul without reservation, offering her a gift more precious than any royal treasure. To dismiss his confession outright would be to deny the very essence of what made their bond special. Yet to accept it would mean challenging centuries of tradition, risking war between their peoples, and potentially destroying both their lives in the process. Her bioluminescent patterns continued to shift erratically, painting the air around them with dancing colors that reflected her inner chaos. Marcus remained perfectly still, giving her space to process while maintaining that crucial eye contact. She noticed how his breathing had quickened, how his fingers twitched slightly at his sides. Small signs of human nervousness that somehow made his bravery all the more remarkable. The gravity of their position weighed heavily upon her. If she chose to reciprocate his feelings, every moment moving forward would require careful navigation through a minefield of political implications. Her arranged marriage to Prince Zarian would need to be dissolved, an act that could destabilize interstellar alliances. The revelation of their relationship would undoubtedly ignite controversy among both their peoples, potentially endangering the fragile peace between humans and Velari. Yet as she watched Marcus standing there, willing to face whatever consequences might come, Zareen realized that the true challenge lay not in external obstacles, but in reconciling her duty with her heart. The Velari were a species built on logic and order, Yet here she stood, experiencing emotions so intense they threatened to overwhelm her sophisticated physiology. The contradiction between what she was and what she felt created a tension that vibrated through every cell of her being. Her lips parted as she attempted to form words, but no sound emerged. How could she possibly articulate the storm raging within her? The weight of her position as crown princess collided with the undeniable truth of her feelings, creating a paradox that defied resolution. Each potential response carried consequences that would ripple through galaxies, affecting countless lives beyond their own. Marcus tilted his head slightly, his expression softening as he recognized her struggle. "Take your time," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the whispering winds. "Whatever you decide, I'll understand." The sincerity in his words only complicated matters further, adding another layer to her already overwhelming dilemma. Here was a human, showing more understanding and patience than many of her own kind ever had, trusting her to navigate this impossible situation. The seconds stretched into minutes, each heartbeat marking another moment lost to indecision. Zarene's consciousness expanded outward, touching the edges of her royal responsibilities while simultaneously sinking deeper into the reality of her feelings. The universe seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her response, while the twin moons cast their judgmental light upon the scene below. Just as Zarene gathered her courage to speak, the ground beneath them trembled with an intensity that surpassed any natural seismic activity. A brilliant flash illuminated the horizon, followed by a series of explosions that rippled through the atmosphere. Her enhanced vision immediately identified the source, a fleet of Zithari warships emerging from hyperspace, their distinctive triangular silhouettes cutting through the night sky like shards of broken glass. Prince Zarian's ship led the formation, its massive bulk dwarfing the smaller vessels accompanying it. The timing couldn't have been worse, or more calculated. Multiple frequencies flooded her communication channels, demanding immediate response from the Crown Princess. The situation escalated further as colonial defense systems powered up, their automated protocols interpreting the sudden appearance of unknown ships as a potential threat. Marcus instinctively stepped closer to Zarene, his protective stance contradicting his earlier vulnerability. "What's happening?" he asked, scanning the sky with a mixture of concern and military readiness that spoke of his training as a colony engineer. The question hung in the air, unanswered, as Zarene processed multiple streams of information simultaneously. The implications crashed over her like a tidal wave. Prince Zarian had arrived ahead of schedule, likely alerted by concerned members of her court about her increasingly frequent disappearances. The coincidence was too perfect. His arrival during Marcus's confession suggested someone had been monitoring their interactions far more closely than she'd realized. The political ramifications multiplied exponentially as she considered how this scene might appear to outside observers. The crown princess of the Valari standing intimately close to a human male while warships filled the sky. Her communication device buzzed urgently, displaying priority messages from both her father, the emperor, and the human colonial governor. The latter's message was particularly alarming. The colony's defense grid had automatically classified the Zithari fleet as hostile due to their aggressive formation and weapons priming. Unless she acted quickly, a diplomatic incident could escalate into full-scale warfare within minutes. The prince's flagship broadcast a direct channel request, flashing emergency priority codes that required immediate acknowledgement. Zarene's bioluminescent patterns shifted to a sharp, warning amber as she accessed the secure line. Through the transmission, she could see Zarian's aristocratic features contorted in controlled anger, his multiple eyes narrowing as they focused on her current position. Behind him, tactical displays showed targeting solutions already calculating trajectories toward both the human colony and Marcus's specific coordinates. "Princess Zarene," Zarian's voice cut through the chaos, layered with barely contained fury. "Care to explain why our long-range sensors detected you in unauthorized proximity to a human male? And why said human appears to be exhibiting behavior consistent with romantic pursuit?" His formal tone dripped with disdain, each word carefully chosen to emphasize the gravity of the situation. Before Zarene could respond, Marcus stepped forward, his voice carrying surprising authority. "With respect, Your Highness," he addressed Zarian through the open channel, "whatever issue you have is with me, not Princess Zarene." His protective stance hadn't wavered, though sweat beaded on his forehead. "If you have concerns about protocol violations, take it up with the human authorities. But threatening military action over a personal matter is unacceptable." Zarian's reaction was immediate and severe. His ship's weapon systems powered up further, targeting indicators locking onto Marcus's position with deadly precision. "How dare a primitive creature address me directly?" he hissed, his multiple voices overlapping in a chilling harmony. "Your species lacks the sophistication to comprehend the gravity of this situation. Step away from the princess immediately, or I will consider it an act of aggression against the Velari-Zithari alliance." The human colony's defense systems responded in kind, their automated protocols escalating the confrontation. Warning klaxons sounded throughout the settlement as residents scrambled for cover. Zarine's position had become a flashpoint for interstellar conflict, her personal crisis magnified into a diplomatic catastrophe that could reshape galactic politics. Her father's voice cut through the chaos, overriding all other communications. "Daughter, explain yourself immediately," Emperor Velther commanded, his normally calm demeanor replaced by barely contained rage. "Do you understand the consequences of your actions? The stability of our empire hangs in the balance because of your reckless behavior." Through it all, Marcus remained steadfast, his human heart beating rapidly but his resolve unshaken. He turned to Zarine, his eyes conveying a silent message of support and understanding. The choice before her had grown infinitely more complex, with billions of lives now hanging in the balance alongside her personal happiness. The gravity of the situation crystallized in Zarine's mind as she processed the unfolding disaster. Each decision point branched into countless possibilities, each with its own devastating consequences. Her training screamed for immediate action to de-escalate the military standoff, while her heart urged her to protect Marcus at all costs. The conflicting imperatives created a cognitive dissonance that threatened to overwhelm her sophisticated neural network. Through her enhanced senses, she detected subtle shifts in the colony's defensive posture. Human operators, seeing their princess apparently threatened by alien forces, had begun mobilizing ground units. The irony wasn't lost on her. The very people she had been sent to observe and study were now preparing to defend her honor against her own kind. The situation had spiraled beyond a simple love confession into a complex web of loyalty, duty, and interspecies politics. Zarian's fleet maintained their aggressive stance, weapon systems cycling through target acquisition protocols with cold efficiency. She recognized the tactical pattern, a demonstration of power designed to force compliance while maintaining plausible deniability. The prince was playing a dangerous game, using the pretext of protecting Velari interests to mask his personal vendetta against Marcus. His multiple eyes never left her position, tracking her every movement with predatory precision. Her father's subsequent transmissions revealed the true extent of the political earthquake triggered by Marcus's confession. Court officials had already convened an emergency session, with factions aligning themselves for or against the unprecedented situation. Some saw an opportunity to strengthen ties with humanity through a union between their species, while others viewed the development as an existential threat to Velari purity and supremacy. The debate raging in the imperial court mirrored the military standoff above, with both scenarios threatening to tear apart centuries of carefully maintained order. The human colonial governor's intervention added another layer of complexity. His message, transmitted through official channels, demanded explanations while simultaneously expressing willingness to defend their territory. The governor's tone suggested he had already pieced together enough of the situation to understand its delicate nature, yet protocol required him to treat any threat to colony residents as an act of war. Zarine found herself caught between three distinct power structures: her own royal family, the human colonial administration, and Zarian's vengeful pride, each pulling her in different directions. Marcus's continued presence beside her complicated matters further. His refusal to retreat or show fear, while admirable, played directly into Zarian's narrative of human aggression. Yet asking him to leave would not only validate the prince's accusations but also break the trust they had built over weeks of secret meetings. The human's unwavering support created a paradox. His protection of her was both the problem and the solution, the cause of conflict and the foundation for potential resolution. Time itself seemed to fracture under the weight of decisions that needed to be made. Each second that passed without resolution increased the likelihood of accidental escalation. Weapon systems warmed through their firing sequences, targeting computers calculated probabilities, and automatic defense protocols ticked closer to activation thresholds. The mathematical certainty of disaster approached asymptotically, held at bay only by the slim margin of conscious control exercised by living beings on both sides of the conflict. Through this maelstrom of consequences, Zarine's thoughts circled back to Marcus's original confession. The simplicity of human love, expressed so openly and honestly, now served as both anchor and catalyst in the unfolding crisis. Her bioluminescent patterns pulsed erratically, reflecting the impossible calculus of choices before her. Protect Marcus and risk war. Submit to Zarian and sacrifice everything that made her feel alive, or attempt some third path that might satisfy neither side but preserve the possibility of future understanding. As Zareen grappled with the impossible choices before her, Marcus reached out and gently touched her forearm, a gesture that sent shivers through her sensitive skin. The physical contact broke through her mental paralysis, reminding her of the fundamental connection they had forged despite their differences. His touch carried no agenda, no political calculation, just pure human compassion and understanding. In that moment of contact, she felt her perspective shifting, the rigid framework of Velari protocol beginning to crack under the weight of genuine emotion. As Zareen grappled with the impossible choices before her, Marcus reached out and gently touched her forearm, a gesture that sent shivers through her sensitive skin. The physical contact broke through her mental paralysis, reminding her of the fundamental connection they had forged despite their differences. His touch carried no agenda, no political calculation, just pure human compassion and understanding. In that moment of contact, she felt her perspective shifting, the rigid framework of Velari protocol beginning to crack under the weight of genuine emotion. The realization struck her with the force of a supernova. This crisis wasn't just about choosing between duty and desire, but about redefining what both meant. Her role as crown princess had always been defined by separation, from her own emotions, from other species, from anything that might challenge the established order. Yet Marcus's presence, his unwavering support during this chaos, demonstrated that true leadership might require embracing connection rather than maintaining distance. Her bioluminescent patterns began to stabilize, shifting from erratic pulses to a steady, purposeful rhythm. Through their shared touch, she sensed Marcus's determination flowing into her, bolstering her resolve. The human concept of having someone's back took on new meaning as she felt his presence grounding her, providing strength where protocol offered only constraints. Their positions reversed momentarily, the supposedly superior alien finding courage through the connection with a human, rather than the other way around. The tactical situation continued to deteriorate around them, but Zareen's consciousness expanded beyond immediate threats. She saw parallels between this moment and historical accounts of interspecies conflicts, recognizing patterns that repeated across galaxies and centuries. Fear of the unknown, protection of perceived purity, resistance to change. These forces had driven countless wars, destroyed numerous opportunities for understanding. Her personal crisis suddenly represented something larger than herself or Marcus, becoming a microcosm of the very challenges her people faced in their expansion across the stars. Zarian's continued aggression, framed as protection of Velari interests, exemplified precisely the mindset that prevented genuine progress between species. The prince's actions weren't just about punishing her for breaking protocol. They represented a fundamental rejection of anything that challenged established hierarchies. Yet here she stood, connected to a human through something more profound than biology or politics, a connection that threatened to rewrite the rules governing relationships between their peoples. Her awareness of Marcus's physical presence sharpened, each detail taking on symbolic significance. The warmth of his hand through her sensitive skin, the steady rhythm of his human heart, the mixture of fear and determination in his scent. All these sensations contradicted everything she had been taught about maintaining distance from lesser species. Rather than diminishing her royal status, this connection enhanced her understanding of leadership, suggesting that true power lay not in maintaining barriers but in bridging divides. The colony's defense systems continued their automated protocols, while Zarian's fleet maintained their threatening posture. Through it all, Marcus's grip on her arm remained firm, communicating without words his commitment to stand by her regardless of outcome. This unwavering support forced her to confront the possibility that love, rather than weakening her position, might actually provide the strength needed to navigate this crisis. The human concept of vulnerability as strength began to resonate with her own species' teachings about emotional authenticity, creating a synthesis that challenged centuries of diplomatic tradition. Zareen's consciousness expanded further, encompassing the perspectives of everyone involved. Her father's concerns about stability, Zarian's wounded pride, the human colonists' protective instincts, Marcus's unconditional support. Each viewpoint contributed to a complex tapestry of motivations and fears, none inherently evil but all contributing to the current impasse. Her role as mediator suddenly seemed less about enforcing existing rules and more about forging new understandings that could accommodate conflicting needs without sacrificing essential values. The tactical computers continued their countdowns, weapon systems warming through final stages of preparation. Yet within this crucible of potential destruction, Zareen felt something unexpected taking shape. Not just a personal transformation, but the possibility of systemic change. The crisis had exposed fault lines in Velari society that went far beyond her relationship with Marcus, revealing assumptions about species hierarchy and emotional control that might finally be ready for re-evaluation. Her bioluminescent patterns shifted again, this time forming intricate patterns that reflected her growing clarity. Through her shared touch with Marcus, she began transmitting subtle signals, not just to him, but to everyone observing the situation. These patterns encoded a message more complex than words could convey, suggesting possibilities beyond simple victory or defeat. The human concept of win-win situations merged with Velari traditions of harmonious coexistence, creating a new paradigm that acknowledged differences without requiring submission or separation. As the moment of decision approached, Zareen drew strength from Marcus's continued presence. His human limitations, once seen as weaknesses according to Velari standards, now appeared as sources of remarkable resilience. The way his body processed stress, the chemical reactions fueling his courage, the neurological pathways supporting his unwavering support. All these factors combined to create a form of strength that complemented rather than competed with her own capabilities. Their connection exemplified not just personal compatibility, but the potential for interspecies cooperation that respected rather than erased differences. The tactical situation reached critical mass as targeting computers on both sides completed their final calculations. Energy readings spiked across multiple spectrums, creating a palpable tension in the atmosphere that made breathing difficult even for Zareen's advanced physiology. Through her enhanced senses, she detected the precise moment when automated systems would transition from threat assessment to actual engagement, mere seconds away unless she acted decisively. Drawing upon the synthesis of insights that had crystallized during her shared moment with Marcus, Zareen initiated a multi-channel transmission that leveraged every aspect of her royal authority. Using protocols reserved for extreme emergencies, she simultaneously broadcast to Zarian's fleet, the human colony's defense grid, her father's court, and all observing parties across known space. The signal carried not just words, but layers of bioluminescent coding that conveyed complex meanings beyond verbal language. "Attention all parties," she began, her voice resonating with newfound authority that blended human emotional authenticity with Velari precision. "By right of my position as Crown Princess, I declare this situation a unique opportunity for interspecies understanding rather than conflict." Her secondary arms extended in a traditional Velari gesture of peace, while her primary hands remained in contact with Marcus, creating a visual symbol of unity that transcended cultural boundaries. To Zarian's fleet, she transmitted detailed tactical analyses demonstrating how their aggressive posture violated 17 separate articles of interstellar law regarding peaceful approaches to populated territories. Simultaneously, she signaled the human colony's defense systems with encrypted commands that temporarily disabled their automated response protocols, buying crucial seconds to prevent accidental escalation. Her father received a separate channel containing documentation of her observations about human Velari interactions over the past months, presented in formats specifically designed to appeal to imperial sensibilities. The most innovative aspect of her strategy emerged as she activated a previously unused diplomatic protocol, the establishment of a temporary neutral zone centered on her current position. Drawing upon ancient Velari traditions of safe spaces for conflict resolution, she designated the area surrounding her and Marcus as sacred ground where conventional rules of engagement were suspended. This move forced both sides to either withdraw their weapons locks or publicly violate sacred Velari law, creating a clever trap for those seeking to maintain appearances while pursuing aggressive agendas. Simultaneously, she initiated a cascade of diplomatic requests that exploited procedural loopholes in both Velari and human protocols. By declaring her intention to pursue formal interspecies mediation under Article 372 of the Galactic Concordance, she triggered mandatory cooling-off periods that required all parties to stand down their weapon systems for a minimum of standard hours. The brilliance of this maneuver lay in its irreversibility. Once invoked, the Article's provisions could only be terminated by unanimous consent of all involved parties. Through her bioluminescent patterns, she began transmitting a continuous stream of data that documented the physiological responses of both herself and Marcus during this crisis. These readings provided irrefutable evidence of their genuine connection, presented in scientific terms that appealed to Velari analytical tendencies while maintaining the emotional authenticity that resonated with human sensibilities. The patterns formed complex visual arguments that bypassed linguistic barriers, creating a universal language of shared experience. Her next move demonstrated masterful political timing. She requested immediate audience with her father's council, invoking rarely used provisions that allowed emergency sessions to include representatives from affected parties. This bold stroke forced the imperial court to acknowledge the human perspective officially, while simultaneously providing a platform for Marcus to present his case in terms that Velari officials could understand and respect. The strategic genius lay in how this approach transformed what could have been seen as a personal matter into an official diplomatic proceeding with proper protocols and documentation. As these various threads of action unfolded, Zareen maintained constant physical contact with Marcus, using their connection to anchor her decisions in authentic emotional reality. Her bioluminescent signals adjusted in real time based on his physiological responses, ensuring that each diplomatic move aligned with both their genuine feelings and strategic necessities. This integration of emotion and tactics created a new paradigm of leadership that combined the best aspects of both their species' approaches to conflict resolution. The tactical situation began to shift as her coordinated strategies took effect. Zarian's fleet hesitated, caught between their aggressive orders and the legal implications of violating sacred Velari protocols. The human colony's defense systems entered standby mode, their operators receiving clear documentation of the diplomatic proceedings that justified temporary deactivation. Most significantly, the Imperial Court's emergency session convened with unprecedented speed, their curiosity about this unprecedented situation overcoming initial resistance to including human participants. Through it all, Zareen maintained her position at the center of the neutral zone, her presence serving as both shield and catalyst for the transformation unfolding around her. Each heartbeat marked another successful implementation of her multifaceted strategy. Each breath brought them closer to a resolution that honored both duty and desire without sacrificing either. The crisis that had begun with a simple confession of love had evolved into a pivotal moment for interspecies relations, with her actions setting precedents that would echo through galactic history. As the immediate danger receded and diplomatic protocols took hold, Zareen found herself facing a new landscape of possibilities and challenges. The temporary measures she had implemented provided breathing room, but the fundamental issues remained unresolved. Her father's court had agreed to the emergency session, but the underlying tensions between tradition and progress continued to simmer. Zarian's fleet maintained their position in orbit, their weapon systems on standby rather than fully powered down. The human colony buzzed with speculation and concern, their leaders balancing gratitude for her intervention with apprehension about potential repercussions. Marcus's continued presence beside her served as both anchor and catalyst for the changes rippling through the established order. His human perspective kept her grounded in the emotional reality of their situation, preventing her from retreating entirely into procedural abstraction. Yet his very existence as a factor in royal diplomacy challenged centuries of Velari tradition, forcing everyone involved to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of relationships between species. The love that had sparked this crisis now stood as a test case for whether genuine connection could transcend artificial barriers. The upcoming council session loomed large in her consciousness, representing both opportunity and peril. The inclusion of human representatives in imperial proceedings marked a historical first that could either pave the way for greater understanding or trigger reactionary backlash from conservative elements. Documents detailing her observations of human culture and their potential contributions to Velari society needed careful preparation, balancing authenticity with strategic considerations. Each piece of evidence, each argument she planned to present, had to walk the fine line between challenging tradition and respecting its foundations. Zarian's role in the proceedings added another layer of complexity. His wounded pride and political ambitions had been temporarily checked by protocol, but the prince remained a formidable opponent. His interpretation of events would frame the discussion in ways that could either facilitate compromise or entrench opposition. The challenge lay in addressing his legitimate concerns about Velari sovereignty while demonstrating how interspecies cooperation could enhance rather than diminish their civilization's achievements. The human colonial administration faced its own set of dilemmas. Their representatives would need to balance gratitude for Zareen's intervention with the need to assert human independence and dignity. The colony's defense response, while justified by protocol, had revealed vulnerabilities that both sides now needed to address. Establishing frameworks for future interactions required careful negotiation of power dynamics, with trust needing to be built on both sides through concrete actions rather than empty promises. Technical details of implementing any agreements would prove equally challenging. Systems for monitoring and verifying compliance needed development, incorporating elements from both Velari and human technologies. Cultural exchange programs required careful design to prevent misunderstandings while fostering genuine appreciation. Economic and scientific collaboration opportunities had to be evaluated for mutual benefit while avoiding exploitation or dependency. Most fundamentally, the personal dimension of the situation demanded resolution alongside the political aspects. Zarine's feelings for Marcus, now officially part of diplomatic discourse, required careful handling to prevent reduction to mere bargaining chips. The authenticity of their connection needed protection from those who might seek to manipulate it for political gain. Finding ways to honor their bond while fulfilling her royal duties presented perhaps the greatest challenge of all. As preparations for the council session continued, Zarine recognized that their current position represented not an endpoint but a threshold. The crisis had opened doors to possibilities previously unimaginable, but walking through them would require courage, creativity, and commitment from all parties involved. The coming discussions would determine whether this moment of crisis could transform into an opportunity for lasting change, or whether the forces of tradition and fear would prevail in maintaining artificial barriers between species. The observation deck where it all began now served as both sanctuary and stage for the unfolding drama. Through its crystalline walls, Zarine watched as maintenance crews worked to repair damage from the recent tension, their movements synchronized with the rhythm of her thoughts. Marcus stood nearby, his presence both comfort and challenge, while technicians from both species collaborated on restoring systems affected by the crisis. This seemingly mundane activity symbolized the larger task ahead, rebuilding relationships damaged by prejudice and protocol. Communication channels buzzed with preliminary exchanges, each message carrying the weight of potential futures. Legal experts from both Velari and human communities debated jurisdictional nuances, their arguments shaping frameworks that would define interspecies interactions for generations. Scientists exchanged data on biological compatibilities and environmental adaptations, their findings influencing proposals for sustainable cooperation. Cultural specialists compared social structures and value systems, seeking common ground while respecting essential differences. The council chamber itself underwent transformation, its traditionally Velari architecture adapting to accommodate human delegates. Seating arrangements, lighting spectrums, atmospheric compositions, each element required careful adjustment to ensure equitable participation. These practical considerations mirrored the larger challenge of creating space for genuine dialogue without compromising core identities. Zarine observed these preparations with mixed emotions, recognizing how each detail represented both progress and potential friction points. Her father's court divided into factions, some viewing the crisis as validation of traditional isolationist policies, others seeing it as evidence of evolution's necessity. Conservative elements rallied around Zarian's narrative of protocol violation, while reform-minded nobles cited historical precedents for adaptive change. The resulting debates spilled beyond formal sessions into every aspect of Velari society, forcing individuals at all levels to confront their assumptions about species hierarchy and emotional authenticity. Human representatives arrived with their own internal divisions to navigate. Colonial leaders balanced pragmatic considerations with ethical imperatives, while Earth-based authorities weighed the implications of endorsing unprecedented levels of interspecies intimacy. Media coverage fueled public discourse, with opinions ranging from enthusiastic support to vehement opposition. The sheer scale of attention focused on their situation underscored the historical significance of their choices. Technological interfaces between species required innovative solutions, blending Velari organic computing systems with human digital networks. Engineers from both sides worked feverishly to develop translation matrices that preserved nuance while enabling efficient communication. Security protocols needed redesign to accommodate different threat perceptions, while medical teams developed hybrid treatment facilities capable of serving diverse physiologies. Each technical challenge solved created new opportunities for misunderstanding, requiring constant vigilance and adjustment. Personal relationships across the divide began forming spontaneously, driven by shared experiences during the crisis. Velari diplomats found themselves explaining bioluminescent signaling patterns to fascinated human colleagues, while human artists attempted to capture the beauty of alien physiology in media accessible to both species. These informal connections created a web of mutual investment that complicated formal negotiations while providing essential ballast against complete breakdown. As the moment of formal proceedings approached, Zareen recognized the true nature of their undertaking. This wasn't just about resolving a diplomatic incident or legitimizing a personal relationship. It was about redefining the very concept of civilization in multi-species terms. The structures they built now would determine whether future generations viewed their era as a stepping stone to greater understanding or a cautionary tale about missed opportunities. Every decision carried weight far beyond immediate circumstances, shaping possibilities that extended far into the future. Standing at this crossroads of species and destiny, Zareen felt the full measure of responsibility resting on her shoulders. The love that had sparked this transformation now served as both foundation and frontier, challenging everyone involved to expand their understanding of what was possible. The coming council session would test whether the bonds of genuine connection could withstand the pressures of tradition and politics, whether the seeds of change planted during crisis could grow into lasting bridges between worlds.